Boy, this way, boy. Slow down, boy. Inside, boy.
Boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to unpack today. But first, consider this a spoiler warning for the God of War games. Still here? Great, let's dive into today's question. Is Kratos an awful father? Well, the answer is it's complicated. See, based on everything we've seen in the games, Kratos appears to have been a good father to his first child, Calliope. Sure, he committed a little bit of family homicide, but what loving father doesn't?
Why, you little...
Jokes aside, it's clear that Kratos has only shown genuine affection for Calliope. Consider the following scenes. In this illusion scene in God of War Ascension, we see that the first thing Kratos does when he returns home is to rush to see his daughter. Also in this flashback scene, Kratos is seen carving a gift by hand for Calliope. Finally, I think the biggest display of Kratos' affection for Calliope comes from Chains of Olympus. In this game, Kratos enters the underworld and is reunited with Calliope. However, this ends in tragedy when Kratos finds out that if he stays with her, she will die an eternal death and be unable to rest in peace. In order to save her from this fate, Kratos sacrifices what remains of his humanity and leaves her side. He prioritizes her well-being over his greatest wish to be with her. At the end of Chains of Olympus, Kratos even states how Calliope was one of the only people he ever truly cared for. Additionally, in God of War 3, Kratos develops a sort of father-daughter relationship with a girl called Pandora. Zeus even calls Kratos out on this, stating, "Don't confuse this object, this construction of Hephaestus, with your own flesh and blood, but perhaps you already have, Spartan." Near the end of the game, Pandora has to sacrifice herself in order to open Pandora's box. This sacrifice would allow Kratos to kill Zeus and complete his quest for vengeance. Despite all of this, Kratos tries to stop Pandora, telling her he'll find another way. So clearly, Kratos has not only shown the capacity to care about his children, but to prioritize them over himself. If that's the case, then why did Kratos neglect Atreus for 11 years? Well, I intend to find the answer to that question, and many more, in today's psychoanalysis of Kratos. Class, welcome to VGOLOGY, where we explore the psychology of our favorite video games. At the start of God of War 2018, it's clear that Kratos and Atreus are practically strangers. Kratos seems to know very little about Atreus and vice versa. In the God of War digital comics, we find out that Kratos spent most of his time in solitude, trying to learn how to control his rage by fighting monsters in the woods. Due to Atreus' tendency to get sick, Kratos never took him into the woods with him. As a result, Kratos left most of the parenting to Faye and neglected Atreus for most of his life.
He always leaves. He's never here. He doesn't want me and he never will. I don't know him and he doesn't know me. Doesn't seem to want to.
A lot of Kratos' actions here can be explained by the fact that he suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder. If there's any doubt on whether or not Kratos has PTSD, well, let's take a quick look at what might be troubling him. Killed his wife and daughter. Check. Killed his mother. Check. Watched his brother die in front of him. Check. Killed the only person who was kind to him. Check. Killed his father and all of his extended family members in the Greek pantheon and then brought down all of Greece. Big check. So that puts that question to bed. Now, in regards to PTSD patients, Hello Glover studied 4 clinical cases of PTSD in Vietnam veterans and found that these individuals express difficulty in feeling intimacy with loved ones and would often avoid and undermine the possibility of becoming involved in a trusting relationship. You see, PTSD tends to be linked with avoidant behavior and could easily explain Kratos' emotional avoidance of being a father. Kratos has already lost a child and blames himself for that loss. It would make sense that he has a difficult time connecting with another child. Furthermore, in a study by Robert Fox and his colleagues, they find that post-traumatic stress symptoms also lead to changes in emotional and social loneliness. This study could help explain why Kratos tends to spend most of his time alone. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, Kratos is also going into the woods to try to learn how to control his rage. He's doing this by looking for monsters to fight, but instead of fighting back, he lets the monsters attack him and focuses on not losing his temper. This method is similar to an actual technique used in anger management therapy called stress inoculation. Stress inoculation tasks individuals with imagining an anger-inducing situation and rehearsing how they would deal with that situation in a healthy way. By practicing this, individuals are able to approach situations with greater self-control. The only difference here is that Kratos is not imagining these scenarios. Instead, he's actively putting himself in these situations with the intention of learning how to control his temper better. Eventually, Faye dies, and Kratos is tasked with the responsibility of raising Atreus on his own. At the start of their journey, Kratos is very strict and cold towards Atreus. However, this does not mean that he does not care for Atreus. Central to the game's story is the idea of Kratos wanting to raise Atreus to become a better man than him, and he does this through tough love. According According to Merriam-Webster, tough love is love or affectionate concern expressed in a stern or unsentimental manner, especially to promote responsible behavior. Unsurprisingly, studies have shown that tough love seems to be less effective than other forms of guidance. In addition, it is also important to remember Kratos is from a Spartan culture, which focuses on military fitness from a very young age. As a result, Spartan boys are raised to be strong and tough individuals. Kratos did care for Atreus in his own way, but showed it through the use of tough love. Now, this isn't to suggest that Kratos' parenting style was a good one, but rather to explain that it was what he was familiar with based on his upbringing and culture. I mean, take a look at how he treated his own brother, who he clearly loved.
A Spartan warrior never lets his back hit the ground. Even in death, a Spartan stands tall for battle. You are a Spartan, are you not?
Yes, Kratos.
The writers also have Kratos show his concern for Atreus in a very clever way. As mentioned earlier, due to Kratos' PTSD, he has a difficult time emotionally connecting to his son. This could explain why Kratos constantly refers to Atreus as boy, instead of calling him by his name. You see, the use of a name creates an emotional bond. This is why a common sales technique is for that salesperson to refer to somebody by name, because it subconsciously creates an emotional link and makes a person more likely to buy things from the salesperson. On the flip side, the lack or omission of someone's name creates a subconscious distance to that person. This is why killers are often seen in interviews not referring to their victims by name. It creates an emotional distance from them and their crimes. The behavior panel mentioned this in their analysis of Family Annihilator Chris Watts, which we'll take a brief look at here.
And then walked in the house and nothing was vanished. Nothing was here. I mean, she wasn't here. The kids weren't here. Nobody was here.
I'd also want to be mentioning the names of people and their relationship to me. He minimizes and distances, almost negates by saying nothing was here.
So, whether Kratos is creating this emotional distance from Atreus consciously or unconsciously, we cannot say for sure, but we can be sure that it's there. Now, here's where things get interesting. In situations of high stress, such as when Atreus is in danger or hurt, Kratos tends to use Atreus' name instead of calling him boy.
Atreus!
No! I'm sorry!
Atreus!
Brother, the boy.
Atreus.
In a study conducted by Laura Saslow and her colleagues, they found that under stressful situations, linguistic cognitive complexity also drops. From this study, we can infer that under stress, there is less mental filtering taking place when choosing the words that are said. This means that Kratos' first instinct under stress is to call Atreus by name, signifying affection and care for him. As Kratos and Atreus continue their journey together, they start to bond, and we can slowly see Kratos become a better father. This is big for Kratos because for the first time since the death of Calliope, he is developing a real bond with his child. As mentioned previously in this video, Kratos displays avoidance behavior in connecting with loved ones due to self-blame and trauma. However, he is now replacing his past traumas with new experiences that can help him provide some peace from the memories that haunt him. This is actually similar to a real-life technique commonly used to treat PTSD called exposure therapy. The idea behind exposure therapy is to help reduce a person's fears and anxieties by having a person actively confront the situations that would cause him distress. Over time, the patient will start to become desensitized to the distressor. As such, Kratos' regrets and pain of being a father are being slowly mended by parenting Atreus. Now, just as a side note, it's important to know that exposure therapy is meant to be administered in small, manageable increments and increase over time, whereas Kratos was thrown headfirst into his new responsibilities. This would have been overwhelming for Kratos and may have contributed to the tension between the two at the start of the journey. Kratos even confirms how overwhelmed he is by these responsibilities in this scene here.
And neither am I. I do not know how to do this without you.
Regardless, Atreus and Kratos eventually hit their stride, and their relationship improves. However, tragedy strikes when Atreus gets sick. This is when Kratos' past traumas come to a climax. Just like Calliope's death was on his hands, the life of his son is now in jeopardy because of him.
I did this to him. Will you help me?
In order to save his son, he has to confront a past he's buried and retrieve the Blades of Chaos. This situation caused Kratos to dwell on everything he tried to forget. During this scene, he starts to see hallucinations of Athena, who symbolizes his past traumas. In my video on Jinx, I described a real-life case study of a man who developed psychotic symptoms after a traumatic event. The man began to experience hallucinations even though he never had them prior to the trauma. Researchers describe the cause of these hallucinations as feelings of shame and guilt paired with constantly thinking about past traumas. This This perfectly describes what's happening to Kratos in this scene. He is dwelling on his past traumas while also feeling intense guilt and shame over what's happening to Atreus. However, Kratos soldiers on through the pain and the memories and returns home where he must face the embodiment of his trauma. As Kratos walks through the apparition of Athena, he also reaches the final stage of the grief cycle, acceptance. In the stage of acceptance, a person comes to terms with their grief and is able to accept a new reality that is in front of them. For Kratos, that reality is that he must let go of his past and become a proper father to the son that now relies on him. This is a major turning point in the relationship between the two, and after this, we see Kratos become a true father to Atreus. This relationship hits its peak at the peak of Jotunheim, where, for the first time, Kratos finally calls Atreus his son. Kratos is a man that is stained in sin by the ashes of his dead family. With his new family, he had to take on the burden of raising his son and releasing Faye's ashes. Throughout this journey, Kratos finds new meaning and purpose and becomes redeemed by his new family. I think this idea is perfectly captured at the end of the game, where Kratos and Atreus work together to release Faye's ashes. In contrast to the ashes of his old family that will forever stain him, Kratos is able to honor the wishes of his new family and let go of Faye's ashes to blow away free and untethered. If you enjoyed this video and want to help fulfill my wishes, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you want to learn more about psychosis and the grief cycle, check out this video I did about Jinx. Or you can check out another one of my video game psychology videos linked on the screen. Let me know what other characters or concepts you want to see in the comments below. As always, thanks for checking out VGOLOGY. Class dismissed.